If you crave stories that expose the darkness behind perfect lives, hit subscribe, because this one will leave you questioning everything you see online. The desert air in southern Utah was still when the knock came. It wasn't loud. It wasn't urgent. Just a small, desperate sound echoing through a quiet neighborhood as dusk settled over red rock and empty streets. Inside the home, a woman moved slowly through a dim hallway, unaware that history was about to change. Outside, a thin boy stood trembling on a neighbor's porch. His clothes hung loosely from his small frame. His lips were dry, cracked from dehydration. When the door opened, he didn't speak at first. He simply whispered, "Can you help me?" Within minutes, the calm suburban silence shattered. A call to emergency services. A rush of panic. Police lights flashing blue and red across the quiet street. The kind of scene neighbors would remember forever. Officers arrived expecting a routine welfare check. Instead, they stepped into a situation that would soon capture national attention and ignite a global conversation about trust, parenting, and the dark side of online perfection. Because this wasn't just any household. This was the home connected to one of YouTube's most recognizable parenting personalities, a woman who had built an empire on family values, discipline, and millions of loyal viewers who watched her daily life unfold on screen. Her name was Franke. For years, Ruby had carefully crafted an image of the ideal mother. Through polished videos and carefully edited family moments, she invited the world into her home. Viewers saw structured routines, strict parenting, and what appeared to be a tightly run household built on order and discipline. Her channel grew rapidly. Millions tuned in. Sponsors took notice. Families across the United States, Europe, and beyond watched her advice, some praising her methods, others quietly questioning them. But no one imagined what authorities would soon uncover. As police moved toward the property tied to the boy's desperate plea for help, they expected confusion, perhaps a misunderstanding. Instead, they found themselves stepping into an unfolding investigation that would stretch far beyond a single home. Inside the residence, the atmosphere felt heavy. Windows were covered. Rooms were sparsely furnished. The air carried an unsettling stillness. Officers exchanged quick glances as they began documenting what they saw. Meanwhile, word began to spread. Neighbors watched from behind curtains. Phones buzzed with messages. Someone mentioned the name associated with the house, and suddenly the situation felt larger than a routine emergency call. It felt like something that would soon dominate headlines. Detectives were called in quickly. The initial responding officers knew they were looking at more than a simple welfare case. Questions began forming immediately. How long had this been happening? Who was responsible? And how could a situation like this exist behind the carefully curated image of a popular online personality? As investigators worked, they began piecing together connections, addresses, relationships, public records, digital footprints. Each detail added another layer to a story that was rapidly evolving from local concern into a national investigation. Back online, Franke's social media pages remained visible. Videos showing smiling children, structured routines, and confident parenting advice still played for viewers around the world who had no idea what was unfolding in real time. The contrast between the polished online image and the growing reality of the investigation created a chilling tension. Authorities moved quickly to secure the scene and ensure everyone involved received immediate medical and professional attention. Additional locations connected to the case were identified. More questions surfaced. More details began to emerge. What investigators were uncovering raised serious concerns about the environment behind the camera, concerns that demanded careful, thorough examination. Specialists and legal teams became involved. Every step required precision, documentation, and sensitivity. As the hours passed, law enforcement vehicles lined the quiet street. News of the developing situation began reaching local reporters. Cameras appeared at a distance. The story was starting to leak beyond the neighborhood. Inside police vehicles and command centers, conversations intensified. Officers reviewed timelines. Detectives compared statements. Every piece of information pointed toward a deeply complex situation that went far beyond what anyone initially expected. The name Ruby Franke now carried a different weight, not just as a content creator known for parenting advice, but as someone directly connected to a rapidly expanding criminal investigation. Authorities knew the public attention would be immense once details emerged. The case involved not only serious legal questions, but also the influence of online personalities and the responsibility that came with millions of viewers. Investigators worked late into the night, documenting evidence and coordinating with legal authorities. Each discovery added urgency. Each new detail made it clear that this case would soon move far beyond local jurisdiction and into the national spotlight. By early morning, the situation had escalated. Additional law enforcement resources were deployed. Statements were being prepared. The quiet suburban street that had once been just another neighborhood was now the center of an investigation that would shock viewers across the world. And then came the moment that changed everything. Inside one of the connected properties, investigators uncovered evidence that pointed to a far deeper and more troubling situation than anyone had initially imagined. What they found suggested that the reality behind the online image was far more complicated and far more serious than millions of viewers had ever suspected. As detectives stepped back and exchanged stunned looks, one thing became clear. The story of the trusted YouTube mom was about to transform into one of the most disturbing and controversial cases in recent internet history. And when the full truth began to surface, it would leave the world asking a haunting question. How much of what we see online can we truly believe? The morning after the discovery, the quiet neighborhood no longer felt quiet. Satellite trucks lined the streets. News reporters stood behind yellow tape, speaking in urgent tones as cameras rolled. The story had broken overnight, and it was spreading fast. Inside a temporary command center, investigators moved with focused intensity. What had started as a desperate knock on a neighbor's door was now a full-scale criminal investigation attracting national and international attention. Every detail mattered. Every timeline had to be reconstructed, and every connection needed to be examined carefully. Detectives began by mapping out the relationships at the center of the case. Ruby Franke, once known primarily for her family-focused content, had spent years building a reputation as a strict but devoted parent. Her online presence emphasized discipline, structure, and personal accountability. Millions had followed her guidance. Some admired her approach. Others questioned it quietly. Now, that carefully constructed image was under intense scrutiny. Authorities began reviewing hours of publicly available videos. What once appeared to be ordinary parenting content now carried new weight. Investigators weren't looking for viral moments or polished editing. They were looking for patterns, context, and potential clues about life behind the camera. At the same time, interviews were conducted with individuals connected to the family. Neighbors described a household that appeared private and controlled. Some mentioned rarely seeing the children outside. Others spoke of an atmosphere that felt unusually quiet. None of them had imagined the situation that was now unfolding. Digital forensic teams worked to secure online records and communications relevant to the case. Every message, collaboration, and shared platform came under review. The investigation expanded beyond a single location, drawing attention to individuals and influences that had shaped the environment surrounding the family. As details began to surface through official channels, public reaction intensified. Across social media platforms, millions expressed shock. Longtime viewers struggled to reconcile the online persona they had followed with the seriousness of the investigation now being reported. Discussions spread across forums and news outlets, each trying to understand how such a situation could develop behind the scenes of a widely viewed family channel. Meanwhile, legal authorities prepared formal charges based on the evidence gathered so far. Court documents were carefully assembled. Statements were reviewed. The process required precision, ensuring that every step followed legal standards and protected the rights of all involved. Inside the investigative team, the pressure was immense. The case involved not only serious legal concerns, but also the broader implications of online influence. Detectives knew the world was watching. Every update would be analyzed. Every decision would be scrutinized. They had to proceed with clarity and professionalism. As more information emerged, the timeline of events leading to that initial knock on the neighbor's door became clearer. Investigators traced movements, communications, and key moments that revealed how the situation had escalated over time. What they uncovered suggested a complex web of influence, decision-making, and control that extended beyond a single individual. The investigation also highlighted the powerful role of perception. For years, viewers had seen a curated version of family life. Carefully edited videos presented structure and order. Behind the scenes, however, authorities now believed a very different reality existed, one that required thorough examination in court. Legal experts began appearing on television, discussing the broader implications of the case. Questions about online parenting content, accountability, and the responsibility of influencers dominated headlines. The story had moved far beyond one family. It had become a global conversation about trust and authenticity in the digital age. As court proceedings began to take shape, prosecutors prepared to present their findings. Defense teams organized their own strategies. Every detail would be contested. Every statement would be examined. The legal battle ahead promised to be complex and highly publicized. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense. Journalists filled the seats. Observers watched closely. The case had drawn attention from across the United States and beyond, with many recognizing its potential to set precedents regarding online influence and personal responsibility. During preliminary hearings, prosecutors outlined the seriousness of the allegations and the evidence supporting them. Defense attorneys responded with their own arguments, emphasizing the need for careful consideration of all facts. The process moved deliberately, each step governed by legal procedure. Outside the courthouse, public interest continued to grow. Online discussions surged. Some expressed disbelief. Others demanded accountability. Many simply waited for clarity, hoping the legal process would reveal the full truth. Investigators, however, were still uncovering new information. Additional evidence continued to emerge, prompting further analysis and review. Each discovery added depth to a case that was already one of the most closely watched in recent memory. Then, just as the investigation seemed to be settling into a predictable legal path, a new development changed everything. A previously unknown piece of evidence surfaced, something investigators had not initially considered, but that now appeared crucial to understanding the full scope of the situation. It pointed toward deeper influences and decisions that extended beyond what had already been revealed. Inside the investigative team, the reaction was immediate. Conversations shifted. Strategies adjusted. If this new information proved accurate, it could significantly reshape how the entire case was understood. As authorities prepared to present this discovery in court, one reality became clear. The story the public thought they knew was only part of the truth. And what was about to be revealed next would challenge everything people believed about the trusted YouTube mom and the world behind the screen. The courtroom was silent when the new evidence was finally introduced. By then, the case had already consumed headlines across the United States, Europe, and beyond. Millions who had once watched cheerful family videos were now following legal updates with a mixture of disbelief and unease. What had started as a single emergency call had evolved into one of the most talked about criminal cases connected to an online personality. But even after weeks of investigation and public scrutiny, the most critical details were only now coming into focus. Prosecutors entered the courtroom with carefully organized files and digital records. Their strategy was clear: present a timeline that would connect every major decision, every influence, and every turning point that led to the events under investigation. They weren't just building a legal argument. They were reconstructing a reality that had existed behind the scenes for years. As documents and testimony were presented, a more complex picture began to emerge. Investigators had uncovered evidence suggesting that the environment surrounding the family had been shaped by a tightly controlled structure of authority and belief. Decisions were not always made independently. Influences extended beyond what viewers had seen on screen. The online persona that millions trusted had been only one layer of a much deeper and more complicated reality. Witnesses described a household governed by strict rules and expectations. Experts explained how such environments could affect decision-making and behavior over time. Each testimony added context, slowly revealing how the situation had escalated into something far more serious than anyone outside the home had realized. Defense attorneys worked to challenge the narrative, emphasizing the importance of perspective and interpretation. They questioned timelines, disputed certain conclusions, and urged the court to consider the broader circumstances surrounding the case. The legal battle became a careful balance between evidence and argument, each side presenting its version of events. Outside the courthouse, crowds gathered daily. News anchors delivered live updates. Online discussions surged with every new detail released through official channels. The case had become more than a legal proceeding. It had become a cultural moment, a reflection on trust, influence, and the power of digital personas. For many viewers, the most unsettling aspect was the contrast between what they had seen online and what was now being revealed in court. For years, they had watched structured routines, confident advice, and carefully framed family moments. Now, they were confronting a narrative that suggested a far more complicated reality behind those videos. As the trial progressed, investigators presented the full timeline leading to that initial knock on the neighbor's door. They detailed how concerns had developed, how authorities had responded, and how the situation had ultimately come to light. Every step was examined with precision, ensuring the court understood not only what happened, but how it happened. Then came the moment that would define the case. After reviewing testimony, evidence, and legal arguments, the court prepared to deliver its decision. The atmosphere inside the courtroom was tense. Journalists sat poised with notebooks. Observers leaned forward in silence. Across the world, millions waited for updates. The ruling would determine accountability. It would also send a message about responsibility in an age where personal lives could be broadcast to global audiences. When the decision was finally announced, reactions were immediate. Some expressed relief that the legal process had reached a conclusion. Others reflected on the broader lessons the case had revealed. The outcome marked the end of one chapter, but it also raised lasting questions about trust and transparency in the digital era. In the weeks that followed, the online channels once associated with the family grew quiet. Videos that had once attracted millions of views now felt like echoes from a different time. Former followers revisited old content with new perspective, noticing details they had previously overlooked. Legal experts and commentators continued to analyze the case, discussing its implications for online creators and audiences alike. The story served as a reminder that digital images, no matter how polished, never reveal the full complexity of real lives. Behind every screen exists a reality shaped by choices, influences, and consequences. For investigators who had worked tirelessly on the case, the resolution brought a sense of closure. They had followed the evidence wherever it led, ensuring that every decision was grounded in fact and procedure. Their work had transformed a quiet neighborhood call for help into a case that would be studied and discussed for years to come. Yet even with the legal process concluded, the story lingered in the public imagination. How had a trusted online figure built such a powerful image? How had warning signs gone unnoticed for so long? And what responsibilities come with sharing personal lives on a global platform? The answers were not simple. They never are in cases where public perception and private reality collide. But one truth remained clear. The gap between what we see and what truly exists can be far wider than anyone expects. As time passed, the case became part of a broader conversation about accountability, influence, and the importance of looking beyond appearances. It reminded audiences everywhere that trust must be earned through actions, not just images. And for those who had followed the story from the beginning, one lingering thought remained. If a family admired by millions could hide such a complicated reality, how many other stories remain unseen behind the screens we watch every day? If this story left you questioning what's real and what's only carefully shown, then you already know. The next case will be even more unsettling. Stay close, because some truths don't stay hidden forever.